The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark.
Your stories don't define you. How you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. You may have seen or heard about the upcoming No Longer Virtual Summit to be convened in Austin, Texas on February 10th and 11th this year. It will be our 8th year. The first was in February of 2017. In this week's episode, I'm sharing a sort of retrospective, my personal highlights of the past 7 NLV events for a couple of reasons. One reason is to simply take inventory, to give myself reminders of each of the events, the people I've had the pleasure to know and grow with, and the lessons I've learned over the years. The other reason is to share what I've learned with others in the hope that something will be sticky for you, and that you'll consider doing something way out of your comfort zone, taking a risk that has the potential for the scale of the reward I've experienced by hosting this event. The morning after a call in August of 2016 with Kartik Rajan, a brilliant writer and thinker I met on LinkedIn, I was absolutely inspired. I woke up thinking about all I'd been learning from him and some of the others I had met on that platform. And I couldn't let go of the idea that I'd learn exponentially more from them if we met in person. And I wasn't wrong. I reached out to him and to a few others in the close group that had been developing over a couple of years to ask if they'd fly across the country and in from Canada and the UK to facilitate workshop sessions to share their expertise in their professional spheres. I can't pay anyone, I told them. The expectation is that every person pays a small registration fee to cover costs, because every person will participate and benefit from each session. 23 of us met on a Wednesday evening at the hotel lobby bar of the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. As Kartik wrote in an article on LinkedIn later that month, the gathering felt more like a reunion of old friends than a professional networking event of strangers who had only ever met online. That edge of awkwardness that happens at the beginning of an event, most of us felt that Thursday morning, but it dissolved in minutes as we started our first session, hosted by my dear friends Heather Younger and Chris Spurvey. Every session brought home lessons for me, and one that continues to shape my work is something Melissa Hughes said when she hosted her session. She said, sometimes you have to get up to the cheap seats. And she was using the metaphor of those high seats in the bleachers at a baseball game so that we can gain perspective by getting to a higher view, to look at the bigger picture when we feel stuck and in the weeds. I've been planning events for most of my life, starting with birthday parties for my younger sister, Karen, when she was 10 and I was 15. I've planned, coordinated, spoken at, and attended dozens of conferences over the years, learning something from every event, the things I loved about them, and the things I'd avoid when I planned my own. And planning NLV has always been a labor of love for me. To leverage the experience in the room, every session is a workshop, not a presentation. There aren't any keynotes, because participants contribute to the sessions with their own experiences and expertise. The people hosting sessions are referred to as facilitators, not presenters. To enhance the learning, almost every session is co-facilitated by experts in their fields, bringing different styles and perspectives and making it a lot more likely that each participant will gain something from the session. The sessions at NLV 2018 in Denver, Colorado, that over time came to have significant impact on my business, were sessions by Ben Walker and my brother Eric Elkins, and by Zach Messler and Amy Blazka. Many of us had side hustles at that point. Some had recently left their jobs to experiment with self-employment. And some of us had no intention of leaving our job. We just expected our side hustles to stay that way. In the session hosted by Ben and my brother Eric, we were introduced to concepts and tools around scaling our business with process efficiencies and hiring versus contracting. Ben said, look, you started your business because you're great at A. You love it, and you know people will pay you for it. So if you're spending your time on B, C, and D activities, You are leaving potential for impact and money on the table. It's been 7 years, and his words continue to influence my business decisions. Every time I realize I'm spending time on things outside of my expertise, things that can be done better by somebody outside of my own business, outsourced electronically or by delegating, I think of Ben and Eric. 7 years later, a session hosted by Amy Blazka and Zach Messler continues to influence how I share what I do. I remember the brilliant, simple approach. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Zach is still using it, so follow him if you want to learn a ton about messaging. It was also at NLV 2018 that I met Kurt Mercadante. 2 things he shared with the group have had huge impact on me. The first is don't start your business so you can give yourself a job. Start it so you can give yourself freedom. And the other thing he said was to stop measuring your productivity by inputs. Start measuring your productivity in output. In other words, make decisions about what you're going to accomplish and the time you want to take to do it. And then you're done. Whether you've put in 2 hours or 8 or 10 that day, you've accomplished your goal. Now go outside, play with your kids or your fur babies. Read a book for fun. Your time is yours. NLV 2019 had us back in Atlanta, Georgia, this time at the Intercontinental in Buckhead. It was the largest summit to date with 38 people in the room. Jason Ellinger and Matt Carpenter from Beard and Bowler hosted a session on storytelling that many of us are still talking about 6 years later. And Adrienne Kimball and Sarah Elkins Cohen, yes, my sister, brought deep insight and alignment on what diversity and inclusion means, not only in the workplace, but in our personal lives as well. NLV 2020 was in Chicago a few days before the shutdown for the COVID-19 pandemic. I have some vivid memories from those couple of days, starting with Shelley Brown stepping up to facilitate a session because the original hosts had to cancel at the last minute. Shelley brought an incredible and critical session on mindfulness to our group, and the timing could not have been more important. I still use some of the techniques she shared with us that morning. For the last session on that first day, we had tickets to explore Chicago's famous Art Institute. And just before we left our meeting room at the top of the Aon building to walk to the museum, I made some housekeeping announcements and ended by sharing what was in my heart at that moment. I said to the group, "We are all receiving frightening, potentially life-changing and life-threatening messages right now via email, phone, and text. From our top floor windows, we've watched Chicago transform from a busy, bustling city to a ghost town. And friends, we are in exactly the right place and with the right people to hear this news. Because the people in this room are the ones who will become exactly the community we all need to weather this storm. From business and job referrals to brainstorming new services we can provide, and to being the community of emotional support we will desperately need over the next few months as we navigate the uncertainty that we have never imagined. Connect with each other as we wander through the Art Institute. Share your fears and hopes. Talk about what you need or what you think you might need from each other." 2 years later, in March of 2022, we met again in Park City, Utah. And quite a few who attended in 2020 came back so they could complete the cycle and reconnect in person after nearly 2 years of social isolation. I remember having a big aha moment during a session Luke Freeman, Hannah Braderud, and Sarah Blewett hosted on the topic of belonging. When they proposed the session, I knew it would be valuable. I wasn't sure it was especially relevant to me and my business, but I was wrong. That conversation connected so many ideas and experiences I've had for me, uncovering a pattern that helped me understand and appreciate those experiences for where they got me. I realized, in a much deeper sense, the distinction between belonging and fitting in. Amazing. In 2023, we went back to Chicago. We stayed in a gorgeous hotel on Michigan Avenue, a perfect location for wandering, and just under a mile from our first day's field trip location in the afternoon, the American Writers Museum. The most vivid memory from NLV 2023 is observing our community as they entered the small, beautifully designed, thoughtfully curated, and imaginatively created museum. I stood there and I watched this group like second graders walking into a candy store. I had worked with the museum program manager to create a custom scavenger hunt and had prepared the group by breaking them into small teams, distributing the different talents of our participants so each team had a variety of different approaches to the activity, using their StrengthsFinder results. When we regrouped at the end, the sparks of insights about each other and ourselves were flying. It was the highlight of the event for me, and I've heard others say the same. At the end of that first day, at nearly 6 p.m., one new NLVer said to another first-time attendee, "I've never stayed for the last session at conferences. I'm always done around 3. I apologized to him for the sessions going so late, and he said, "Oh no, I'm not complaining, Sarah. I'm not complaining at all. This was the most amazing, productive, inspiring day of any conference I've ever attended." Since that first No Longer Virtual Summit in 2017, every year people have asked when I would host in my home state of Montana. And I'd explain that February and early March are very cold and unpredictable here. I didn't want to risk people getting stuck coming into or leaving Montana. And it can be very expensive to get here, though I was sure I could find accommodations inexpensive enough to make up the difference for the higher-priced airfares. And in 2024, I finally hosted the summit in Missoula, Montana. And boy, was it worth the wait. The weather cooperated for the whole time. Neil Hughes flew in all the way from the UK, and Jennifer Jane Young came in from Ottawa in Canada. We were able to walk from the hotel to the meeting venue and all over downtown for dinner and evening adventures. My Montana friend and former grade school teacher, Heidi Lagerquist, helped me set up our meeting room for the summit, a former elementary school classroom in the Montana Children's Theater building, complete with one full wall of chalkboards and one wall of windows overlooking the city. Our theme in 24 was curiosity and creativity, and we decorated the room in bright colors like a second grade classroom. We had a creativity station with temporary tattoo markers, Play-Doh, and coloring pages and markers. After everyone made their own name tags, they were directed to a back table with huge pieces of white cardstock paper. And I asked them to use their non-dominant hand to either write their name or draw a picture with the finger paints. There was so much laughter and so much fun in the room the moment people entered it. What stands out to me about that year was, again, observing our participants as they walked into the room, watching them notice the colorful decorations, seeing their faces light up as they picked up fidget toys and opened the Play-Doh, and seeing their joy in welcoming each other into the room with huge smiles and warm hugs. It was breathtaking. I've learned a lot of lessons with each year hosting the No Longer Virtual Summit, and one of the most important is that when you're building a community, you have to remember that people have to feel like they're contributing to it if they're really going to belong. And that's why this year's event is even better than past No Longer Virtuals. A community came together to help plan, promote, and execute our 2025 summit coming up. The location, agenda, facilitators, and promotion have all been a community effort, ensuring a solid lineup of relevant, engaging, inspiring workshops facilitated by some of the most generous, successful, wicked smart professionals you will ever meet. If you've been looking for a professional development investment that goes way beyond the content of the sessions, an event built by a community of small business owners, entrepreneurs, and innovators, an intimate setting of less than 30 participants, and at a ridiculously affordable price, this is it. There are just a few spots left, friends. Join us for No Longer Virtual 2025. Visit elkinsconsulting.com to register today. Thank you for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. Let's connect beyond the keyboard. I'd love to hear your stories.
That's the time. You must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying?